Hello and welcome to Data Analysis with Excel. In this series of tutorials, I'll be teaching you how to analyze data inside of Excel. And if you're not familiar with Excel, you don't have to worry. You need no prior knowledge of Excel at all in order to follow up with this series of tutorials. So all you need to do is have Excel installed on your computer and you have access to the data set I provided. Now, if you have those two things, you're good to go. A lot of people talk about writing formulas, advanced Excel, and all that. Those things are good, but as a data analyst, you want to move quickly and you want to move fast. So you don't have to worry about writing complex formulas with Excel. In data analysis for Excel, all you need is a pivot table. You just need to know how to work with a pivot table, and that's really everything you need. Just understand the way pivot table works and you're good to go. So I have my Excel opened here and I've provided the data sets we'll be using for this class. So make sure you have the data set downloaded and ready to go. The next thing we want to do is import that data set into Excel. So come on to File, and these are files I've been working on previously, so yours may not have this, especially if you're new with Excel. So what you want to do is come to Browse. So go to Browse and navigate your computer to wherever you have that data set placed. So mine is on desktop, and we are working with this IMDb movie data set. So go ahead and click on Open. And here we are. The data set has been imported into Excel. Next thing we want to do is learn how to navigate through Excel so that it makes our work a whole lot easy. So as you can see, we have about how many columns? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. About 18 columns. And we have a whole lot of rows. Now, working with a large data set like this has challenges. So say you want to scroll to the bottom of the entire data set. So you keep scrolling and scrolling. There's a lot of work to do. So all you have to do is click on any part of your sheet. Make sure you're interacting with the worksheet. On your keyboard, press Ctrl and down arrow key. So Control and down arrow key, it skips to the end of your data set or wherever there is a missing value. So the way it works, Excel notices a breakpoint, and when you do Control and arrow down, it skips to that particular breakpoint in your data set. Like in this case, you can see we have missing values here, and that's fine. So Excel has skipped to this point where it considers this is the end of the row, but that's not the end of this particular column rather. So we hold Control and arrow down, and you can see wherever we have a missing value, like this point where we have missing data, it jumps to the part where we have missing data. So that's how Excel learns where you have missing data. So this is the end of the data set, right? So for the titles, movie Renault, Woman in Gold. So to go back to the top, you just hold Control up arrow key. See, we are back at the top. If you want to go to the far right, you do Control right arrow key, and you find yourself in the far right. Control down arrow key again. Back at the bottom, Control left arrow key. You're back at the left at the big starting of the data set once again. So these tools are necessary for you to learn about navigating through Excel's worksheet. Another useful tool that we will need to know how to use if you're going to be successful using Excel is selecting a large range of data, and that is Control and Shift, then your arrow keys. So let's say I want to select the entire column of names, right? The entire column of titles, the movie titles. So all I have to do is say control, hold down control on your keyboard, press shift and up arrow key. This has selected the entire column of title. So let's say I want to select the entire row, this row 2. Control shift right arrow key. So right arrow key, that selected the entire row 2 of the data set. So it selects the entire row. So if I want to select, say, from row 3, right, from A3, so this is how it works. We go A, B, C, and 1, 2, 3. So A3 all the way to A18. So I'm going to do control from A3, control shift, right arrow key, and then I can now go control shift down arrow key. All right, this takes me way beyond above the range I was intending to select. But that's as far as selecting goes. Just control Z that. So that's as far as selecting large portion of your data set. This becomes useful when we're working with pivot tables. And I'll show you practical cases where you need to do quick selection of a large portion of your data set. Now let's go ahead and actually create the pivot table. Now to create the pivot table, all you do is make sure you're interacting with your worksheet. Any portion of your worksheet doesn't matter. Just click on any part of the worksheet. Now click on any part of your worksheet, come to insert and see pivot table. Insert. So it might be at home. So that's where we've been. Click on insert and pivot table. So when you click on home, insert and pivot table, you're going to be prompted with this window. Now it says select a table or range. Now there are two ways to create a pivot table. You can create a pivot table from a table or a range. Now in our case, we do not have a table. I repeat, we do not yet have a table. So we are creating this pivot table from a range. Now a range, like we talked about, is a selection, is a portion of the data set that we've selected. That's what creates a range. Whereas the table is the entire data set, and tables have more advantages than ranges, because I'll show you cases where using a table supersedes using a range. Now, with a range, we can select only a portion of our data set and create the pivot table based upon that portion that we've selected. How does that work, if you might ask? So if you notice here, we have A1, which is the beginning, A1 up to arrow 3726, which if I cancel this, if you go back to the bottom, control left arrow key, so you see we have 3726. So that's the last on the row arrow, the colon arrow rather, and the row 3726. Now this is the end of the entire data set we have. So Excel is selecting based on the entire range of the data set. But we could create the pivot table on our own preference, on a range preference. So you can go in and say, okay, I want to create this table from, do that, create this table from A1, and I don't want to include some portions. So I want to create the table from A1 to E24. All you do is type in here E and get rid of all of this E24, right? So if we do this, if I say okay, which you shouldn't, if you're following along, you shouldn't do this. If I say okay, then the table range I'm creating will only range from A1 to E24. So we are only taking this portion. Now, another way to select a range is to use the range selection tool. So you can go ahead and click on this, and this allows to select a portion. So with this, so we can also do from A1 to E24 once again, and you see it updates A1 to E24. That's the essence of this tool, the range selection tool. But like I said, do not do this. We want to use a range for now. In the later chapter of this tutorial, in another video, I will show you how to create a pivot table of an already existing table and the comparison between creating from a range and creating from a table. So now let's get back to Excel. We are going to insert a pivot table from the range of the entire data set. Cool. So there are options. So select use an external source which you don't want to use, and you should be mindful of this selection where it says new worksheet or existing worksheet. Now, if you create the pivot table on the existing worksheet, the pivot table is going to appear on the same worksheet we are on right now. It's going to just create this here, which is not the best practice, right? So don't do that. Always create your pivot table to a new worksheet. Again, table or range. If you have a table, that's fine. For now, we do not have a table. We only have a range. So we're creating the pivot table of the range, and we are creating the pivot table to a new worksheet. So bear in mind what I said. We are creating the pivot table from a range because we do not have a table right now, and we are creating the pivot table to a new worksheet. All right. So having those two conditions met, we can go ahead and say okay, and voila. Congratulations, you have your pivot table in a new worksheet. So bottom of your workbook, you should have the IMDb data set, your raw data, untampered and unspoiled. And you have your what you call sheet 1, which you can go ahead and rename. You can double click on it and call it pivot. Right? Okay. So you can call that your pivot, so you know where your pivot table is. And this, see this two says pivot table 1. This is the pivot table. All right. This is the pivot table, and the next video I will explain the user interface of your pivot table. Like I said, you don't need to know anything about Excel to work with pivot tables. So this will be the end of this chapter. The next chapter, I'm going to go ahead and take you through the pivot table and talk about how the pivot table works, how Excel analyzes data, how Excel thinks through the pivot table. So I really appreciate sticking this far through the video. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section, and don't forget to like and subscribe. So subscribe and turn on the notification icon so that whenever I release a new video, you always have the notification and you can have early access to the video. Then make sure you subscribe. It's very important that you subscribe to this channel because you're going to be putting out content concerning data analysis regularly. So till I see you next time, keep practicing.